Hi, my name is Karen Holmes. I'm the founder and director of the World Peace Organization for the One World Government. Today I wanted to do a short about the filibuster, and I wanted to address an idea. My organization is working to create an international government based on the U.S. Constitution, and we have to address certain issues before the Constitution can become the basis for an international government. But whether or not you support the idea of international government, at this point in time, it doesn't really matter because it's still open for debate, and it's still something that has to happen on a global basis. So people have to see the reason for it to happen. It's not going to come overnight. It has to come slowly in perfect order. But what the part of the perfect order is to create the perfect order is for us to address certain laws and practices that have created chaos in the system. So that's what we're doing today, is we're looking at a problem with the filibuster. We always have three choices: up, down, or straight ahead. So when we're looking at a filibuster, we have people who, and I've talked about this before, people who are standing on the principles, the people who are relying on the existing structure, and then the people who are going down into the games. So you can look at any idea three different ways. Let's say principles, power, or project. Okay, so now we're going to look at it. This idea of the filibuster based as a power game, based on the principles, or based on just we can do that, and its existing structure. Okay? So the two main ideas now are basically, is it principles or power? When you look at somebody stands up and says, I don't like that, okay, then basically we're going to block that, like Merrick Garland's confirmation process. When Mitch McConnell stood up and said that Barack Obama's nomination, Merrick Garland, to the Supreme Court is going to be blocked, and we're going to make sure that it's not going to happen. Then they were able to. They had 3 Supreme Court vacancies during Donald Trump's. Well, now we have the power. Okay, we're going to shift the power. We're going to use this to shift the power this way. If we instate that idea on the international level, that is not going to work. We have to stand on the principles. We have to understand what the principles and the intent of it's the intent of the law or the letter of the law. So let's look back at what the intent of the law was, and by using the example of blocking legislation, blocking a plan, an idea. It wasn't necessarily legislation, but when it came to debating the Constitution itself. Okay, so all the delegates to the convention got together and they decided that they were going to write a constitution. Okay, so they debated it. They talked about federal rights, and then they talked about states' rights because they had 13 original colonies, and then they had to deal with the federal level, and they had to decide whether it was going to be a weak government, a weak central government, or a strong one. They had to decide what the whole idea is be related to. Are they going to have a president, or were they going to have a king? How long the terms were. But then, so they decided, they hashed that out, they got together, and much of Congress works that way. Now it's debated the same way. They had conventions where they did that, and now in the conference or the committees, they hash things out and they come together and they debate that. Good for them. That's their job to do that. But the filibuster idea came about, not necessarily the filibuster idea, but let's say Patrick Henry stood up and said, before they were all ready to sign it, we have federal rights and we have this. Constitution creates a government. Okay, but then Patrick Henry stood up and said, before we sign this, we have to address individual rights. We're not done yet. we cannot sign this now because we're not done hashing this out. And that's when they came up with the idea of the Bill of Rights, the individual rights, which so many people, every American, basically, we look at that. We don't have a lot to say over how Congress runs. We don't have a lot to say over how the states runs. On an individual basis, it's pretty hard to make a lot of changes there. But when it comes to individual rights, how many people are standing up of the Second Amendment rights, First Amendment rights? Okay, how about those Bill of Rights basically came about because somebody, Patrick Henry, blocked legislation. So let's say that now, then the idea of the filibuster has changed, and the idea, well, I can stand up and do that, but let's say, we watched the movies, the one with Jimmy Stewart, where Jimmy Stewart goes to Congress, and he stands up and he reads out of the book, and he's, talks Dr. Seuss, things like that. So anyway, what I'm saying is the filibuster, there's always three different ways to look at anything. Is it going to stand on the principles? Is it going to be a matter of the intent of the law, or a matter of a power grab? The intent of the law or the letter of the law, the narrower perspective that is legal, but it's not really going to solve problems. If Merrick Garland's confirmation was blocked, the process was blocked by Mitch McConnell, that was in a letter of the law act. It was legal, but it wasn't the intent of the law. It was a power grab. Power grabs always lead to a loss of power. So let's say that if we're looking at a filibuster, let's have them storm the mountain. In other words, let's have them build on each other's. That's how our founding fathers worked. They would get together and they would come up with an idea. Well, we have to create a constitution, and then we're going to debate it. Are we going to have kings, or are we going to have presidents? Are we going to do this? They built on each other's ideas. They debated the ideas, and they built on this ideas till they came up with a very high outcome. They stood on principles of equality and liberty and freedom, that they weren't based on the idea of the Declaration of Independence, the unalienable rights, and they had to look at those unalienable rights that people have. Okay, that's where we are now, is we have to start building on ideas, and the idea, our plan for the international government, opens the debate for everyone. So what I'd like you to do is to, when you're talking to your family and friends, I'd like you to discuss certain issues related to this idea, going back to the intent of the law, the founders' intentions of this, instead of saying, yeah, you go, Mitch, and you block everything those darn Republicans or Democrats are doing. Instead of saying, yeah, we're going to grab the power and we're going to be president the next time. Instead of doing that, I'd like you to look at the intent of the law as opposed to the letter of the law. Because every time you say, we're going to destroy the democracy so that we can win, that's what my next short is going to be about, called Evolution to the Revolution. I'm going to talk about revolution. Okay, so thank you. I'd like you to like, share, and subscribe, and comment down below, but mostly share with your friends and talk about this idea, because we're working to create an international government. And is that in our best interest now? We have international law right now. We have international relations. We have trade agreements. We have all these things. So how can we control all these things without an international government that holds the rights of all people? We have genocides going on and rebellions and people. We have immigration problems. Would an international government solve the problem of immigration reform rather than putting up a big wall? Okay, so like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.